Folks, welcome back to Tabletop Tactics and our revamped faction focus series with myself, Lawrence, and Mike, aka the pastry chef. So what are we talking about today?
Not my name.
Not your name.
Weird.
We're talking about the ones that know the true names of demons.
666 of them!
The Grey Knights, yes, the Sons of Titan, the Hammers of Titan. So we're going to go over the top 5 changes from this Codex to the previous Codex Grey Knights, which was an 8th edition Codex, and now updated for 9th. So the format of this new show will be thus. We're going to go over the army rules. We're going to go over the super doctrines. We're going to go over the chapter tactics. We're going to go over some of the key stat changes, and of course some of those key points changes. Then, if you are mega bosses and you want to join us over on demand, we will do another further 2 videos. Okay,
digging deeper.
With top 5 combinations in this Grey Knights Codex and our top 5 unit picks also. Very, very exciting. So, what we'll kick off with first are, of course, the army rules, because they have had a little change.
Yeah, well, quite a significant one, actually.
They have indeed. So let's cover that next. So, Chef.
Give me the army rules.
Let's talk army rules.
Put them into my brain.
Yes. So we used to have things, something called Demon Hunters.
Yes.
Which was pretty neat, but only really effective against demons.
As the name implies.
Yeah, they were called Demon Hunters.
Yes. That's the original 3rd edition Codex.
It's true,
It's called Demon Hunters.
Yeah, it's true.
He had Cotiers on the front with his big hammer.
This is old school now.
Yeah.
That's where you're going, old school.
Yeah.
But what we've got now is something called the Aegis. Okay? So the Aegis allows us to, against any type of mortal wound, ignore it on a 5+.
Any mortal wound.
Plus, army-wide, we get a +1 to deny.
Yes.
Thoughts?
Well, previously it was +1 to cast.
Yep.
Which was very good.
Yeah. That was super aggressive.
That was super aggressive.
Yeah.
However, it was offset by your what was it called? The banishment thing. The rule
Rites of banishment.
That's it. Rites of banishment, where you had basically baby smites.
Yeah.
Now you have full smites. Yeah. So you kind of, it's not necessarily that's a new army rule, but you just on the level as everyone else. The +1 to deny is very situational.
Yeah.
But it can be quite powerful given the potency of Psychers. And remember, we're in a really weird era of the game where we're waiting on a lot of actually quite Psyker-heavy armies yet to come.
Yeah.
Sure, we've got Grey Knights and Thousand Suns, but you've got Eldar, you've got Harlequins, you've got Tyranids. These are all armies... Demons, all armies that are actually quite not reliant on their psychic powers.
And Chaos Space Marines as well.
Chaos Space Marines
generally
as well.
Been pretty known for psychic.
So, it seems quite niche at the moment, but it could potentially be quite powerful.
Yeah.
The 5-up shrug against mortal wounds is a really weird one. I have a very love-hate relationship with this kind of army rule, because on the one hand, there will be games where it does nothing.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there will be games where it literally keeps you longer in the game than you have any right to be.
Yeah.
And because it's against any mortal wound, that can be against mortal wounds caused
Explosion?
by explosions, snipers, your own perils of the war.
Yep. Which is really, really useful.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, having played Grey Knights a long time, perils does
You
come
will
up.
perils.
It really does come up. It usually comes up every game, actually.
At least once or twice.
At least once or twice.
Yeah.
So, look, here my thoughts are, obviously I loved +1 to cast. I probably overall preferred +1 to cast. However, the demon rule was kind of just useless. So I'm actually happy to see the back of that, because frankly, it was so situational, that often you didn't get to use it.
Yeah, and getting proper smites kind of is a...
Yeah, I'm loving proper smites.
It's not a trade-off so much, because it's just kind of brought in line. I think a few people are a bit upset that they've lost flat free damage against demons, but also you're gaining D3 against everything.
Yeah.
And flat free against demons was... It was one of those rules which was nice and fluffy, and it was really cool, and it made a lot of sense, but also the demon player's not having a good time at that point.
No. But also we've got other things like tides, which can help against the demon. So we've sort of got it back in there in a different way.
It is swings and roundabouts.
I actually really do like the ignore mortal wound, because I think, you've touched on like with the prevalence of, these new, well, they're not prevalent yet, but when these new psychic armies come out, where smites and mortal wound damage will be more of a thing, actually having a good defense actually provides quite an interesting anti-meta defense as well.
There's lots of stratagems that do mortal wounds as well. There's lots of abilities that do mortal wounds. You sort of look at things like your Death Guard, they can pump out tons of mortal wounds. Even certain units in your AdMech can do a bunch of mortal wounds. And again, it can help against things like errant explosions or, whatever. There will always be something that will do a mortal wound. You may not encounter it every game, but it will come up and it can be pretty significant.
Okay.
And the Aegis does affect everything in the army. It's not just Psyker units. So that works on your vehicles as well.
Which is also...
It can be quite helpful because that's often a weakness of vehicles.
And the +1 to deny is really good at stopping your opponent getting the things off in the first place. So, having said that, we'll talk about 1,000 Suns when we do that faction focus. They kind of cancel each other out.
Yes.
But there are other ways which we'll cover in the combination video to get your bonuses to cast anyway, and good bonuses too. So I like it overall. I do like it. It's not for me a debuff, if you like.
No, it's
not overall.
It's
not
a
net.
side grade.
It's a side grade. Yeah, exactly. So that's the Aegis. Now they've got some classics as well, like Knights of Titan, which is basically a bolter discipline. Although there's no shock assault anymore, we'll cover the reasons for that perhaps in the stat changes. And there's a new rule called Brotherhood Commands.
Yes.
I have a feeling that Games Workshop weren't a fan of multiple Nemesis Dread Knight Grandmasters in the same detachment.
Well, I mean, so from a fluff perspective, it makes total sense. From a balance perspective, it makes total sense because Dread Knight Grandmasters are really good.
Yes, and they should be a rarity as well.
Yes,
right?
they absolutely should.
So you can only have one Grandmaster of either type. And one captain per detachment. And if you do have multiple, they've got to be from different brotherhoods, which is something new that we'll
that is
touch on
new.
as well.
And that, I'm okay with that because again, it makes sense from like a fluff perspective.
Yeah.
From a balance perspective, if you're mixing brotherhoods, it gets real messy real quick.
Yeah.
Because a lot of your abilities affect brotherhoods.
Yeah.
So you'd actually be giving up quite a lot of synergy to take multiple brotherhoods. Obviously, if you've got a plan in mind, so be it.
Yeah.
But it's still like, how often are you likely to do that? I mean, there could be an argument for, sort of taking multiple Grandmasters in Dread Knights and stuff like that. But you'd have to be jumping through a lot of hoops to do it. So it's a weird one.
And your base Dread Knight has gotten a lot better. We'll talk about that in a different video. But look, it's interesting. I get it from a fluff perspective. We've seen it with things like the Demon Prince now being limited to one per detachment, right?
Lords of Chaos in your Death Guard,
captains
in your...
It's obviously, it's not just Grey Knights which have been hit with this, so to speak, and to be honest, any change which supports the fluff, I actually always pretty much really like. Okay. Look, those are the basic army rules. You've obviously got your basic things like objectives secured if you're troops. But that covers the main changes. Overall, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. It is a side grade, as you said. There are times where it's going to be critically important. And there are going to be times where the ignoring the mortal wounds isn't such a big deal, or even the +1 to deny because you're not facing a Psyker.
No.
But I would counteract that with Demon Hunters was probably even worse.
Well, yeah.
Why are you facing demons all the time?
Yeah.
So I feel that at least for the majority of the games, I'm going to have something which does something.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I've said, there'll be situations where it comes up and it's going to be really good. There'll be situations where it does nothing, but that was kind of already the case with a bunch of Grey Knight stuff in your old Codex anyway. And I would also argue the core units themselves are pretty darn good that you don't actually need another layer of stuff or a choice of stuff, of other things to kind of get to that. But yeah, I think for the most part, it is a side grade, but it's certainly not a nerf or a debuff. Okay, well look, we've spoken army changes. Why don't we go over the super doctrines? Yes, your pure army rules.
Yes, our pure army rules.
For being pure of heart.
That is called Masters of the Warp. Let's talk about tides next. It's time to see what these tides do because they are different. They are different. Significantly different. So 8th edition Codex didn't even have any tides. Then they released a supplement, Psychic Awakening, which gave Grey Knights the tides for the first time. And now we've got some of the same tides and some brand new ones also. So first things first, I'm going to immediately talk about the Tide of Shadows.
Yeah.
Okay? Because it is basically the same with one caveat. You now have to be over 12 inches away. So if you're over 12 inches away, the enemy's over 12 inches away from you, you count as being in cover. If you're already in cover, you'll get a -1 to hit being in dense cover.
Yeah, specifically light and dense cover. So things like Iron Warriors, for example, will ignore that.
Yes.
Because previously it was a -1 to hit.
That's right, yeah.
So now that will be ignored. Being 12 inches away is fine. It kind of fits with other stuff that does it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a really good tide.
I think it's really good. And the fact that you can still pick to be what tide you want,
After knowing who has the first turn.
who's going first.
Yeah.
Like,
It's pretty vital.
yes, there are some armies out there, Iron Warriors currently, which ignore cover, but at the end of the day, I would rather know that I can just be in cover with my whole force.
Yeah, exactly.
And potentially have a -1 to hit in addition.
Exactly.
To that,
and because you'll know what those units are and what those armies are, you just deploy accordingly.
Yeah.
Whereas there'll be some times where you just go, I'm not going to be able to get that unit in cover against this army, but I've got Tide of Shadows.
I still think it's very, very good.
Yeah, it's a great one.
To be honest. All right, then let's go over the Tide of Convergence. So this is different now as well.
Yeah, this changed.
So this adds 6 inches to the range characteristic of your psi weapons that models are equipped with. Plus, each time a model in this unit makes a melee attack with a nemesis weapon, on an unmodified wound roll of a 6, the target suffers 1 mortal wound in addition to any normal damage. So if you get into combat and you've got the Tide of Convergence active, you've got some pretty nasty mortal wound output ability because everything has more attacks.
Yeah, everything's got more attacks and they're already damaged 2 with good AP.
Yeah.
You're just really stacking on the damage.
You are stacking on the damage. The +6 inch range to psi weapons, okay. I mean, things like silencers are only 24-inch range.
Yeah, same with the psi cannons, but that's literally it.
Yeah.
It's those 2 weapons.
On an army which tends to deep strike anyway, I mean, I say that, it's not always going to be the case. You're generally going to be within that. So Grey Knights have kind of always been like what I call that mid-board army.
Yeah.
They want to take the centre boards because that's where they're the most damaging.
Yeah, that's where they excel.
Especially if you want to get into range of things like smites. So you're going to hope that you're going to be within 24-inch range or ideally 18-inch range anyway. Look, it's okay. I really like the mortal wound potential.
I look at that and I just go, the range is cute, but I'm using this for when I'm about to hit melee.
It's your combat tide, really.
Because it's only realistically affecting 4 weapons. It's affecting your silencer, your psi cannon, and your heavy versions on your Dread Knights.
Yep.
Which, as you just kind of said, you don't really need. And on the flip side, if that's in range, because your Stormbolters are 24-inch range, if that's in range but your Stormbolters aren't, you're actually losing a fair bit of firepower. Yeah. I would rather use the next one at that point. Tide of Celerity. And just advance to get there.
Yep. Well, that's a very, very interesting point. So let's talk about the Tide of Celerity. So Tide of Celerity, each time an advance roll is made for the unit, you count a 1, 2, a dice roll of a 1 or 2 as a 3 instead. So it's a minimum 3 on your D6 result. Then it buffs even more each time a charge roll is made for that unit. You count a 1 and a 2 as a 3 instead.
Yeah.
Now, it does have an effect if you deep strike and want to get the charge, but the other dice roll will still need to be a 6.
It will, but the way that it works is you've effectively, if you roll a 6 on one, I'm sure someone will do the maths quicker than I will because they'll actually have time to talk about it. But I'm sure I read somewhere that basically the way that it works is it actually increases your chance from deep striking from about 47% to about 57%.
That makes sense. That's probably
that sounds about right because. Sure, you do still need a 6 on one of the dice, but then that gives you you've now got 1 or a 2 or a 3+ to get that. Yeah. So effectively, if you roll a 6 on one of your charge dice, you cannot fail the charge.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Which is pretty good. Yeah. So think about it this way: you're actually rolling 2d6. You only need 1 6 on the charge,
and there are ways
which
to
is good odds.
Your charging even more, which we'll talk about in the combinations.
The advance is really nice for now. Bear in mind, there's not actually a lot of ways to get advance and charge or advance and shoot, and most of your stuff is either rapid fire or heavy. Yep. There are some assault weapons in there, but generally it's still really good for board control because a free. I need a 3+ to get to that objective. Sorted.
Yeah. You just go, well, that will guarantee it.
Yeah. It's not one that you'll probably use all the time.
I could see myself using it off deep strike if I've built an army to do that assault element.
Yeah.
And then I'll synergize it with some other bits. Okay, so those are the first three. We then got Tide of Escalation. The Tide of Escalation.
Massively different.
Yeah. So while this tide is dominant for your army, if you're in your psychic phase, if your army includes any Brotherhood Psychic detachments, each time a unit is selected to manifest psychic powers, it can attempt to manifest its Brotherhood power, even if that power has already been cast. Okay, but until the end of the phase, you add 1 to the power's warp charge value for each other attempt, whether it was successful or not.
Yeah.
So a bit like how Smite
It's a Smite,
works.
basically. It turns your Brotherhood power into a Smite.
Now, obviously, we haven't touched on the Brotherhood powers yet, or the Brotherhoods in general, but this has the potential to be extremely useful, extremely powerful, depending on the Brotherhood that you're going for. So it is very situational, and you are going to, you're going to select this tide depending on what you built your army around, but it definitely has a use.
Oh yeah, 100%. It as you say, it is situational. It's probably the second most situational because the next one's the most situational. Yeah. But yeah, there will be times where you just go, I can really power up here.
Yeah.
Certain ones I'm thinking of, like rapiers for one.
Yeah.
Like
it.
+1 attack, great.
Yep.
I'll do that on multiple units. Obviously, getting more difficult to cast, and without the +1 to cast, it will depend on the power that you're casting. Yep. Situational, but it can be pretty potentially very powerful.
Okay, finally we've got the Tide of Banishment. So this is basically bringing your Demon Hunters rules back in.
Demons be gone.
Okay, so this unit gauges the following ability: Banishment, Aura. While any enemy demon unit within 6 inches of the unit, so they must subtract 2 from the leadership characteristic. Okay, fine. And then finally, each time a model in this unit makes an attack against a demon unit, re-roll a hit roll of 1 and re-roll a wound roll of 1. So it's funny because we played a game where I went into Tide of Convergence.
Yes.
But with hindsight, I think I should have gone Tide of Escalation. So it was one of those times where I think maybe it would have actually been better. Because I wasn't getting enough attacks to actually really probably clink off those mortal wounds.
To fish for the mortal wounds.
Whereas I would have liked more consistency of getting the hits and wounds in the first place because I didn't have any buffs on that unit.
Yeah.
Whether that I would have liked to have I should probably hammer that out, whether it would be better or not. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to really depend on the situation because you've got your Grandmaster and your Brother Captain that can give those auras. Obviously, they can't do the minus leadership aura.
Yeah.
Fine. Given that demons have an invuln save, I would probably be inclined to go for the mortal wounds. But it's going to depend. If they're by themselves, then actually giving rerolls to hit and wound is nice, and that will apply to your characters.
It does work for shooting.
Oh, does it?
That's something I've missed. So each time a model in this unit makes an attack against a demon unit, it doesn't say melee attack. It doesn't say ranged attack. It says attack.
That does change things.
So actually,
yeah. I mean, the thing is, if you're playing
Stormbolters rerunning ones to hit and wound against demons,
that will stack up quite quickly.
It's significant, right?
And
so actually, that's pretty cool.
It's actually pretty good. Obviously, it is situational, but if you're coming up against a demon army, their shooting isn't amazing.
No.
Because it's very limited. Yeah. So you're not going to go for Tide of Shadows. So you'll probably go for that first.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I missed that. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean...
It's actually grown on me now.
It's still...
Because I was a bit like...
Yeah, it's still situational.
Yeah.
Because you need to obviously be fighting demons, which realistically is demons, some chaos units, and the Avatar.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And, it's the Avatar, bless him, and his little cons. And the leadership debuff is fine. Yeah. That can actually have a bit of an impact on demons, but I mean they're...
Well, it can, especially if you've been plinking them off at range.
Yeah.
As well. Like you've got to be close to being that aura, so I mean, yeah,
I mean, the leadership debuff's neither here nor there. Reroll ones to hit and wound at range as well is nice. But I mean, I think it would... Again, it's like with the others, it's going to depend on what you're playing against.
Right. So look, those are the tides. Overall, I'm pretty happy because they still provide a flexible way to play the Grey Knights. Mm-hmm. Yes, there's some situational, some of them are very situational.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think that there are, mainstays like things like Tide of Shadows. Escalation is still good.
Yeah.
I think, and Celerity, again, can be...
It can be pretty clutch.
Very, very clutch. Yeah. Can be game winning actually.
Yeah.
With certain key charges going off. Look, I'm a fan. I'm a fan. It's a nice extra layer of buffs to have. So those are the tides. Next, we're going to be talking the Brotherhoods. The Brotherhoods of Titan. So there's 8 brothers here. We've got the Sword Bearers, the Blades of Victory, Prescient Brethren, Ward Makers, the Exactors, the Rapiers, the Preservers. I think that is it. Silver Blades.
The Silver Blades.
So we're going to briefly go over, sort of dip our toes into them, and then maybe pick out some favourites. Sword Bearers basically buffs up your vehicles.
Yeah.
You've got a stratagem called Marked for Death, which of course I like the sound of that. So you pick an enemy unit within 12 inches and then you'd add 1 to the attack's hit roll for friendly Sword Bearers units. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, like that can be quite powerful.
It is 2 CP. Obviously getting a +1 to hit is always going to be a good thing, but you do need to be within 12 inches.
But the rest of the army doesn't.
That's true. You could set up a deep striking unit, go bam, but you could be screened out. There's multiple tactics that should be employed with that. But ultimately, is it good? Yes, it is. Empiric Lodestone is good to the extent that it's a +1 to wound. It's basically Veterans of the Long War. You've got to select 1 enemy unit within 18 inches. So again, you've got to be up close. It is for a friendly Sword Bearer's vehicle that makes ranged attacks. Yeah, against that enemy unit. So obviously this was synergized with Dread Knights very well because they are vehicles. And having a +1 to wound on your side cannons and Gatling silencers is really good.
Yeah.
The trouble with the Brotherhoods in general is that you kind of want to pick one which you then end up building your army around.
Yes, that one especially is very vehicle heavy.
They are actually, most of them are all pretty good.
Yeah.
Some of them are very good, but you are building your army around them. I suppose like most chapter tactics, right? The Warlord trait, Rights of Protection, it's Warp Charge 5, it is a psychic action. It allows you to select a Sword Bearer's vehicle within 12 inches of the Warlords, and it will give you a 4+ invulnerable save. On a normal Dread Knight, that's pretty cool.
Normal Dread Knights have a 4+ now, I think.
Do they have a 4+ base now?
I think so.
I think the Grandmaster obviously
I know the Grandmaster does. I could be wrong.
That would be interesting, actually, because if it does, then you could put it on something like a Storm Raven. If you're taking a Storm Raven, I'm not the biggest fan. They are very expensive. Unfortunately. Knights, it does 4 shielding is a 4+ invulnerable save. Yeah. So your base Dread Knight, that's a pretty massive buff. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a big buff.
So it won't even affect.
We'll cover that later. But I mean, it's useful for your tanks and stuff. But then I would argue if you're running tanks, why are you running Grey Knights?
Yeah.
Is my opinion. I mean, it could be useful on like a Lucky Dreadnought.
Yeah.
It's essentially a sanctuary for a vehicle.
Yeah.
Fine.
And it is only 1.
Yeah.
So, this is
if
not the psychic power Empiric Loads, which is the Brotherhood power, which you could use the Tide to keep casting.
Yeah.
This is a Warlord trait.
If that was like a 6-inch aura, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
You could make some real nasty stuff, actually.
But
it's okay.
Right, next up we've got Blades of Victory. They've got Radiant Strike stratagem. Their psychic power is called Inescapable Pursuit, and they have a Warlord trait called Vanguard Aggression. You were mentioning some people were talking about Vanguard Aggression being able to get first turn charges.
Yeah, because it's the Warlord and a friendly core unit within 9 inches, but can make a move of up to 6 inches. So that's, let's say you do that on, because I think people are looking at with Dread Knights, for example, you go, cool, well, here's my 6-inch pre-game move, then here's my 9-inch move, so I've moved 15 inches, right? But if your opponent knows that's coming, they're not going to be on their line. Yeah. So it's not going to help you in a huge amount of circumstances.
Yeah,
unless you're playing on your sort of search and destroy style where you're going to be 18 inches away. And that's if you're right on the line and your opponent's right on the line. Yeah. Your opponent can mitigate it a bit. It's okay. Reroll charges for the power is nice.
Inescapable Pursuit is really decent. Warp charge value 6. And obviously if you go into the Tides where you can cast the power multiple times, you could give multiple units reroll charge.
It's going to be tricky to get it off on more than 2, really.
Yes. But then the other thing is do you want to go in the Tide where you can cast that multiple times, or then would you want to synergize that with Tide of Celerity? So
you could cast that, you could be in escalation, cast it multiple times, then warp shape to Celerity, and then you just go, I'm making that charge.
That's it, exactly. So there are definitely ways that you could set this up, and it could be devastating.
But I think it's quite tricky.
It's an interesting one. It's because as well, of course, if you face an army which does have denies, you're going to be sort of building everything for this 1 turn charge. Radiant Strike's quite interesting. Basically, it's a 1 CP stratagem. You've got to be, when you're finishing a charge move.
You shoulder barge people.
Yeah,
you do
exactly.
mortal wounds
For each
based
model
on
in
their toughness.
engagement range. Yeah, you know, okay, fine. It's cute. That's what I call it.
It's cute.
Then we have Ward Makers.
This is really good.
This is one of my favourites, for sure. It's Grandmaster Voldus.
Oh, Grandmaster Rules and Brother Captain Stern, I believe.
That's right, yeah. So first of all, they got a stratagem called Masters of the Word. That's 1 CP. You can select a Ward Master's character and you can swap out their power for a different one in the Dominus discipline.
It's good utility.
It's utility. You know, the ideal is that you've already picked the powers which you know you're going to need in an all-comer situation. But there are going to be perhaps some times where you face an opponent and you go, oh, I really need this power.
Yeah.
So the ability to do it is really useful.
Yeah. And also there'll be times where you go, you know what, this character's in a situation where it's going to be really useful. So there'll be times where you just go, my librarian's like in combat with this gnarly Chaos Lord. Oh, just take Vortex of Doom then.
Yes, Vortex of Doom.
Oh, okay, bad time for you.
The psychic power projection of purity is bonkers good. Warp charge value 6. You do have to be within 12 inches, but until the start of the next psychic phase, that unit is not affected by aura abilities for models in its own army. That's massive.
Yeah.
You know, like there's so many in 9th edition, as was started with 8th edition, really, auras have been such a powerful thing.
Yeah.
And the ability to say to a unit that, no, you're not going to benefit from your army's auras.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, especially on a key unit like or an alpha unit or a big block or something. You've got to be a little bit careful with that one. I mean, this is a very fringe case I've literally just thought of because it says you're not affected by aura units from models in your own army. You could inadvertently cast that on a unit of, say, Blade Guard, who have a librarian behind them who's cast Null Zone, and you go, oh yeah, you can have your invuln back, but you don't get to reroll ones to hit from the captain. You just go, wait a minute, mistakes have been made. And bear in mind that affects the unit themselves, so you can't do that on a, I mean, doing that on a character won't shut down multiple auras.
No.
But that can be useful to go, oh, Drazar, is it? Yeah, no +1 to wound for you. Because he is affected by his own aura.
That's not very nice.
So you just go, no Drazar, naughty.
Don't like that.
Naughty.
Right, finally we got Lawmaster, which is just epic. You make a psychic
really
test on an 8+, you can't deny it. It's not allowed to be denied. It goes off automatically. It is undeniable.
It's undeniably good.
Yes, and there are some great combinations that you can do with that. That's Ward Makers. Let's talk Prescient Brethren. I'm a fan of these as well.
Yeah.
The strat's good. Foresight, 1 CP. Use it in the shooting phase when a unit from your army is selected to shoot, or in the fight phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, you're re-rolling the hit rolls of 1 and the wound rolls of 1.
Yeah.
For 1 CP.
Yeah, it's good. And it's going to be useful on those units. So that's a Psyker unit, isn't it?
It is a Psyker unit.
So you can't do that on a vehicle, but you could do it on a Dread Knight.
You could, because he's also a Psyker. Yeah.
And again, that's useful if you find units that are off by themselves, doing their own thing, don't have character support. Yeah, I mean, for 1 CP, it's great.
Yeah, Fatal Precognition, a good sort of debuff power, basically a unit within 12 inches, warp charge 5. Every time they move, advance, charge, etc., they have to roll a d6. On a 4 to 5, it's d3 mortal wounds. On a 6, it's flat 3. Yeah. You know, you're not going to shake up the world with this, but you can really upset some enemy elites.
And it is good on elite units, and that is that can be useful on a character.
Yeah.
You just go, come at me.
Yeah.
You could die.
Divination. This is your way to get CP back in the army.
I think it's the only way.
It is the only way, yeah. So in your psychic phase, it's a psychic action, warp charge 6. You can attempt this psychic action. If completed, you gain 1 CP. It is a warlord trait, and it is a psychic action. So you're going to want to put this on
a guy that can cast 1 power anyway.
Yeah, you know.
Could be useful on like an ancient.
Off the top of my head, yeah, something like an ancient or an apothecary.
Yeah.
Something like that, which is not, you don't mind them not participating in the bulk of the psychic phase that turn. So yeah, probably an apothecary is where I'd stick it off the top of my head. So that's Prescient Brethren. We then got Preservers and Rapiers. Preservers have Charge of the Ancients for a CP. It's for Dreadnoughts specifically. The model now has a move characteristic of 8 inches, so you're buffing this Dreadnought up. Yep. You can reroll charge rolls made for that unit. And each time the model fights, if it made a charge move this turn, then until the fight is resolved, you add 1 to the damage characteristic of melee weapons. You can only use the stratagem once unless it's an onslaught battle, in which case you can do it twice. Look, if you're building your army around dreadnoughts,
But bear in mind, you can only do it on one.
yes, that's a good point. Yeah, twice, stratagem twice on 2. Yeah,
You can't natively deep strike a dread, but I believe you can gate them.
yeah.
So you could like do something really cute with a single lucky dread and make him an angry lucky dread.
I'm not blown away by this Brotherhood, guys.
It's
to be
cute.
honest, you know,
The powers and the traits make up for it.
well, you've got Aegis Eternal, so warp charge value 6. Until the start of your next psychic phase, each time a model in this Psyker's unit would lose a wound. Someone's done a psychic power outside. While this Psyker's unit's within 3 inches of a friendly Grey Knight's Apothecary, that wound is not lost on a 5+. That is decent. I mean, you've got a 5-up, feel no pain, effectively. But it is a psychic power. It is only a 3-inch range.
Yeah.
So again, you know, I just feel that some of the other Brotherhoods have more army-wide useful bits.
Yeah. Okay.
Although, having said that, the Warlord trait adds 3 inches to the range of your Warlord's aura abilities to a maximum of 12. But again, I'm not blown away by the Preservers. Maybe there will be some people out there which go,
yeah. I mean, they're cool. They're nifty. They're not. I'm not gravitating to them.
No. Then you have Rapiers. They've got Deadly Efficacy for 1 CP. They've got Psychic Power, Symphonic Strike, and the Warlord trait Inescapable Wrath for the Warlord trait's quite neat that it does allow you to advance and charge. Where I don't like it is you're probably wanting a Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knight with that sort of Warlord trait, but then if you're taking the guns, you're not shooting with them.
Yeah.
So you could put it on like a combat Dread Knight.
A combat Dread Knight who's only there to just advance. I mean, there's something to be said about being annoying like that, because you just go, I'm actually pretty cheap at that stage because I'm not packing the guns.
But I think I don't know.
The guns are really
good. I think
now.
to not take the guns on that model, which you can only take one detachment.
Yeah,
I don't want to say it's a mistake, but perhaps it's a missed opportunity, is what I would call it.
If that was advance and shoot and charge, that'd be
then
wild.
all of a sudden you've got my attention, but that's not the case. Symphonic Strike's really neat though. Warp charge 6. Until the start of your next psychic phase, add 1 to the attacks characteristic.
Yeah, you start doing that with Escalation Tide.
Yeah.
You start suddenly going 4 attacks on this unit, 4 attacks on that unit.
And then Deadly Efficacy is being 1 CP until the end of the phase. Each time a model makes a melee attack on the roll of a 6, it's 1 additional hit. So now you're getting extra attacks with the psychic power. You put the stratagem on, they're exploding. That's really neat.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, you don't have to take the Warlord trait.
No. The stratagem and the finger alone are really nice. Yeah.
I like Rapiers. Again, I can see more army-wide buffs coming. So then you have the Exactors. The Sanctic Guardians is 1 CP. This is using the Heroic Intervention step of your opponent's charge phase. You can select 1 Exactors unit from your army that's not within the engagement range, and I'm sure you can guess what's going to come next. They can do a Heroic Intervention. As if they're a character. That is
nice.
very powerful.
It's nice.
It is
it's
very
only
powerful.
a 3-inch one though, right?
It's only a 3-inch one. So, again, if your opponent's aware of this, which they should be, because you should say, hey, by the way, I can do this. Then, they should be able to set it up that it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
But you can also then deploy your units in a way to really benefit from it. So, again, it can be very powerful.
It can funnel your opponent, which is nice.
Yeah. Then they've got their Psychic Powers, Fires of Covenant.
God, it's so silly.
Warp charge value 5. You must be within engagement range of the enemy unit, but you roll a d6 for each model in that unit. Not in engagement range, just each model in the unit.
Yeah.
So if you're in against that blob of 20 Scutari...
Is it models in your unit or models in their unit?
You select 1 enemy unit within the engagement range of this Psyker's unit.
Roll
1d6 for each model in that enemy unit.
In that enemy unit, yeah.
For each roll of a 4+, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound.
Here's my single character in that unit of 30 Demonettes. I just killed 15 of them.
The Psychic Epitome Warlord trait, the enemy unit suffers 1 additional mortal wound after all of these rolls have been made. It doesn't suddenly become 2 mortal wounds per one.
That would be a bit much.
Bonkers.
They thought about that.
So each unit can only be selected for the psychic power once per turn.
Yeah.
Even if you've chosen the tide to cast off.
It's a tricky one to set up because you've got to be in engagement range, and obviously that means that you need to be in engagement range in your psychic phase. But if you can get it lined up, it can be horrifically powerful.
It can be. Look, the Warlord trait, add 1 to your Warlord's leadership characteristic, and while a friendly Exactor's core units within 6 inches, you automatically pass morale. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of the Exactors. Look, the Fires of the Covenant can be amazing, especially if the meta starts going towards Horde, but...
The power's hilarious.
You've got to be in engagement range. You know, there's a lot of things which are happening here. That means if you're in engagement range, you've already fought off a fight phase at this point, because it is a psychic power. So if they're a Horde and they've charged you, you might not be alive. If you've charged them, there's going to be less of them alive anyway to benefit from this power. So again, I'm kind of left going, yeah, probably not going to take it as a Brotherhood. Silver Blades.
I'm a big fan of Silver Blades.
Yep, all right, so adaptive excoriation. It's like Expelliarmus or whatever.
Yeah, excoriation.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so excoriation. So what we have, 1 CP, it's used in the movement phase for a Silver Blade's core unit. When they fall back, they're still eligible to shoot, even though they fell back. Great. They can't charge, but the ability to be able to just fall back and shoot is, we've seen it in multiple armies, and it's very, very powerful.
Great on Dread Knights. It's great on your Dread Knights in combat, and they don't have the sword, so they don't have the sweep attack. And that unit over there really needs to take the Psy Cannon to the face. Cool. On your unit of Purifiers, someone charged you, and okay, cool. Incinerators, or my silencers. Even on a unit of Terminators can be helpful.
It's an amazing army-wide. It's for core units, but a lot of your good units are core anyway. So, it's an amazing ability to have. Temporal accuracy, so psychic power. This is awesome. It's warp charge value 5. Basically, it turns your Storm Bolters and relics that are variants of the Storm Bolter, including mastercrafted ones, as being pistol 4 with a range of 12 inches. So you can just blapse into combat. I mean, again, against Horde, that is brutal. See, I'd rather have that.
You can't tie stuff up.
Then the Exactors. That's just really,
because you just go, I'm going to tie up that unit there with this fearless blob of termagants, and you're going to be there for a 2 turn. You just go, no, I'm not.
I'm just going to basically rapid fire into you, and then I'll fight you in the fight phase too if you're still around.
And because you're paying a premium for that Storm Bolter, it's actually, because sometimes charging in like a strike squad or your Terminators, you can kind of go, I'm losing a bit of firepower here. You kind of go, I'm going to keep that firepower. Sure, it's a pistol and it's relegated to who you're fighting, but it can be pretty nice. And again, Warp Charge 5 is actually pretty cheap to do that on.
I'm like you. I'm a big fan of Silver Blades. I like Ward Makers too.
And what was the Warlord trait for Silver Blades?
So the Warlord trait is also, because I like aggressive Warlords. At the start of the fight phase, you fight first.
Great.
Boom! If you're in engagement range.
No, you fight first even if you're on the other side of the board.
That's right, you just fight first. And then each time this Warlord makes a melee attack, you can reroll the hit roll.
Which is important because you don't get your own rerolls.
That's a great Warlord trait. It's called Martial Perfection.
Especially, do Dread Knight Grandmasters degrade in their weapon skill?
No, not the weapon skill. Their ballistic skill.
It's movement, ballistic skill, and attacks.
And the attacks.
But I mean, it's still, there'll be time, someone comes up with a -1, you go, I'm hitting on freeze now. Whoa, okay, I'll reroll.
Look, honestly, one of the biggest changes in 9th edition is that ability to generally losing your own ability to benefit from your own aura. The amount of times where you've got 6 attacks with a really, really good combat character,
double
and you roll a
ones.
couple of ones.
Yes.
It is, and you want each one, because they're quality attacks usually, to go through. It is massive.
And fighting first with a Grandmaster in a Dread Knight suit will force some pretty difficult decisions. So anyone that multi-charges, you just go, okay.
It also makes the hammer a
very viable option.
Because, and the hammer is savage at D3 plus 3 damage. I'm picking up what's being put down. Right there.
If something's in front of you, it won't be for much longer.
No. So those are the Brotherhoods. Look, big fan. We've got some good options, some options which, a bit of fun, a bit fluffy. But
not everything has to be amazing and competitive.
It absolutely doesn't. So look, overall, big fan. These are new. We've not had them before.
No, this is totally
new. Those are the chapter tactics. Now let's talk over some of those massive things which have affected pretty much our entire army, and that's the stat changes. Statistics are on the brain. Many, many numbers, and many of these numbers have changed for the better. For the better. So the first thing that we're going to talk about are Grey Knights now finally are proper Astartes.
Yay.
They have 2 wounds. The base Marines have 2 wounds. Terminators have gone up to 3 wounds.
Paladins have not gone up to 4 wounds.
Paladins have not gone up to 4 wounds. That is absolutely
They
true.
did get weapon skill boost though.
Yes, they did.
They're all weapon skill 2.
Which is useful. Now, that has dramatically increased the survivability of the force. And you can talk about combining it with things like Tide of Shadows as well. So if even your power armor can effectively, depending on who you're facing, start with a 2+ save, which is nice. And when you're rocking multiple wounds, that's a great thing. For me as well, the offensive output. The +1 attack across the board is really significant.
Well, it's effectively +2.
It is effectively
because your strike squads are now veterans, essentially with your 2 attacks, and your shock assault's baked in, so it's always on. Now, it was very rare that you weren't getting shock assault, but
still,
now you're always getting
have it flat all the time.
Yeah, it means you don't have to worry about being bogged down in combat. There's a few things in the game which turn off charging bonuses, so things like the foul blight spawn in the Death Guard. He said you never count as charging him, so you wouldn't ever have gotten shock assault against him. Whereas now you just go,
now I don't care.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
It's really, really nice. Because I always found previously, Grey Knights would often charge. And unless they were paladins,
Here's my
it was
2
a bit like being slapped with a wet fish. It was just like, it was just not, you just wouldn't kill that much. And you were like, these are Grey Knights. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So,
now you kind of go, okay, they're pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, even a 5 Marine squad is
pumping
rocking
out 16 attacks.
Decent amount of attacks with the Justicar in there, exactly.
And all their force weapons have generally gotten better.
That's the next thing. So I'm really digging flat damage too.
Yeah.
Swords are probably my favourite now overall.
Yes.
You know, everything's come into vogue in different times. Like it was rapiers, then the rapiers
it was
got
the
hit
falchions,
with the points. The falchions. Sorry, it got hit with the points increase, and then people went to halberds, and now we've sort of fallen on the swords. But there are definitely places for all of the types of weapons.
They all have use. I think the flat damage 2 is really nice. There's something to be said for reliability. There will be times where you go, man, I wish I had D3 damage, especially if you're coming up against things which reduce damage by 1.
Yeah, against Death Guard, you're a bit like, But you do have your Nemesis Demon Hammers. If you want to start, if you want to sprinkle some of them in. And then you also, of course, against things like Death Guard, you do have full-blown smite as well.
I think the sword
will help.
Yeah, I think the sword is generally the best though.
+1 strength, -3 AP.
It's the -3.
Yeah,
it's the -3.
Significant.
Going from strength 5 to strength 6 is only realistically useful against toughness 3 stuff, which admittedly there's a fair bit. And it can be useful against your T5 that you're seeing. So obviously your Orcs, obviously your Death Guard. However, the AP3 is just basically going, you don't get an armor save, or especially in certain armies like Sisters, who can reduce your AP by 2 depending on your order, or Lucius, which can have like a -7 save, whatever it is. You just go, no. No, ignore AP2 for you.
And the fact that one of the significant changes now is fixed powers on a lot of the main units. And the main fixed power for your strikes and terminators is hammer hand, which is actually reroll wounds.
Yeah, it used to be +1 to wound.
It used to be +1. Now it's reroll, but if it's reroll, actually
rerolling
again,
on 3s.
is kind of,
rerolling on 2s. I mean,
it doesn't matter.
You're dropping a couple.
So again, I think the sword wins out.
The difference is the ones that then stick. They do the business because they are going through most armor. The difference between a 5-up save, and we're talking Marines, a 5-up save and a 6-up save, you're wounding those Marines on the same strength anyway.
Exactly.
So I think the sword is the best overall.
But ranged weaponry's gotten interesting as well. So the heavy side cannon, the regular side cannon, even the silencer now has got an inbuilt AP -1.
Yeah, they've got better AP. It's either AP
but they've
or
lost
strength.
out on the damage, which is a bit of a shame.
Oh, for the silencer.
Yeah. Like even the
is it strength 5 based?
It is strength 5. So for the Gatling silencer.
So it's the same shots, but it's better strength, better. It feels a different role.
It's a different sort of a role. I'm just checking. It's
basically a better Stormbolt.
So forgive me. The Dread Knight Gatling silencer is strength 5.
Oh, the normal one's strength 4.
The regular silencer is still 6 shots, is what it used to be, but it's strength 4. But you've now got an AP -1
instead of D3 damage.
Now, obviously, there are stratagems and certain combinations which we can talk about in the combos video. But for me, I'm not blown away. I won't lie. I'm not blown away by the silencer in general. I like the Gatling silencer on the Dread Knight. because of that extra pip of strength. And again, you're probably going to be using certain combinations on him anyway, which will also benefit the side cannon. But I mean, is a silencer doing what a load of storm bolters couldn't do? Because don't forget, a silencer's going to be on a marine, which if you move, it's probably going to be having a -1 to hit.
Well, it's going to have the -1 to hit.
So all of a sudden,
you're trading the Nemesis Force weapon, because it is a free upgrade on the power armor.
It is,
admittedly.
but you're losing your force weapon.
You're losing your force weapon for an extra 2 shots and an extra bit of AP. I mean, okay. Like,
I'm not a fan.
I probably wouldn't bother.
Yeah. For me, that would be a bad change.
That would be a bad change. And the other thing as well to consider is you sort of look at it and you go, okay, well, I mean, that could be useful on like a not purifiers, on a purgation squad. But I think the incinerator's free as well.
Yeah, and here's the other thing: the purgation squad. Really when you combine then what the base power of the purgation squad is, which is now a massive change.
Yeah, that is a big change.
So you Astral Aim now doesn't give you
magic bullets,
line of sight. Yeah, exactly. Which is a huge loss.
Ignore cover's nice. Though.
Ignore cover is very nice, and look, I dig that. But then you're only re-rolling 1 shot.
Yes.
To hit.
Yeah, so I mean...
Like if it was giving you re-roll hits or re-roll 1s to hit or something like that, but you're just re-rolling 1 hit.
Yeah.
So when you're pumping out 6, 12, 18, 24 shots, re-rolling one of those dice at that point, who cares?
Here's the thing with the silencer.
Yeah.
Like you say, I mean, you're giving up your force weapon, which is, you are paying a premium for that force weapon because it's really good.
Yeah.
Your attacks are then kind of moot.
Yeah.
It's... On your infantry units, other than the Terminators, it's a free swap, but so's an Incinerator, which does the same thing, is replacing your force weapon. However, here's the thing, especially when you're talking purgation squads, I'll take 6 shots, heavy, strength 4, -1, or I'll take D6, 12-inch range, strength 6, -1.
Yeah.
But purgation squads can natively teleport now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't care about the lower range.
Yeah, which is
And actually, you know what?
probably the way to
A
go.
unit of 5 purgation...
Yeah.
With incinerators.
You still only take 4 guns though.
Sure, but still.
But yeah, I mean, look, the
silence is a bit of a miss.
Yeah, the incinerator is probably, for me, the way I would go with them now. I mean, there is a place for side cannons, but I think that you can, again, probably take that on different units. Yeah. Deep striking in a purgation squad with incinerators is a nice little anti-horde unit. It does suck though that flamers still aren't, like, because they don't have that blast keyword. So if you are facing a horde, like if you roll your 4d6 and you get a bunch of 1s and 2s, it's got a bit of a wet noodle moment.
It does this with the Gat of Fires. It's like, it is blessed with the unguents of the Imperium, the Prometheum.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't give Flamers Blast. I suppose maybe with the 12-inch range and the ability to potentially deep strike things, it was too powerful. But a lot of blast weapons have almost infinite range anyway.
Yeah.
So it's
I think it would hurt that sort of defensive style against your, like especially on vehicles and stuff. And I think from like a narrative perspective as well, there's a bit of a difference because flamer weapons traditionally, even in like the modern era, let alone the weirdness of the 41st millennium, flamer weapons and flamethrower type weapons aren't the most reliable things because they can just.
I think I've just got a bugbear with D6. Like it's the same with the Lascan. I think I would just make it a bit more. Maybe make it 2d3.
That's coming in another video. Don't worry. But generally the weapons have all, for the most part, improved or become more consistent, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. We don't really need to go into any more of the other stat changes. We're on heavy side cannons, better strength, etc. So those are the major stat changes for the Grey Knights. The final thing that we should talk about just a little bit are some of the points changes, because of course we've seen some of those too. Significant. We're going to talk about points. And the first thing that we should talk about are not the elephants in the room, but the Terminators in the room. Am I right? Terminators versus Strikes. This is always a contention for Grey Knight players. And now the new points out in this Codex, you're looking at 42 for a Terminator base. You're looking at 22. You're looking at 22 points for the Strike Marine.
I'm going to throw it out there.
For an Interceptor.
I'm gonna throw this out there, and this is probably a very controversial opinion because obviously we live in an era of like 8-point Scutari. Let's ignore that. Let's pretend that they didn't exist. At 22 points a model, the Strike Squad is probably the best infantry unit in the game.
Yeah. In terms of its output and what it can do.
It's a Psyker. It's got lots of melee. It's got good anti-horde. The only thing lacking...
Psyker with a fixed power, but then access to a Brotherhood power.
Yeah. So it essentially knows 3 powers.
Yeah, but it got no smite, which is obviously massive.
So it's got good anti-horde. It's got good anti-heavy infantry with its melee.
Yeah.
The downsides are, of course, okay, fine. It's, you know, it doesn't have the best in terms of special weapon outload, but you don't really need that. With 3 teleport...
Yeah, with four swords, Nemesis 4 swords.
They punch well above their weight.
You're probably not going to pay for a special weapon on there. You can if
you might take a hammer.
You can if you want, but I probably wouldn't.
I wouldn't. I'd
keep them cheap.
Yeah.
And then with your storm bolters, you've got lots of shots. You know, you could take an incinerator if you know that you're going to be deep striking them.
Probably wouldn't bother.
Again, don't really need to. Don't really need to. That's the thing. The storm bolters still. The storm bolters. This is the thing. When you deep strike, it's guaranteed 4 shots if you're firing at a unit in rapid fire. Whereas the incinerator might roll a 1.
They are incredibly efficient for what they do.
Yeah.
And I think this is the issue. The Terminators just not quite.
Well, the problem is you basically get, you don't quite get, but you basically get 2 Strike Marines for 1 Terminator.
Now the 2 up 5 up is good.
The 2 up 5 up is good and is often underestimated. I've seen a lot of people talking online about it already. People go, oh, Terminators, they just write them off. It's completely not worth it. But I think you forget, look, if you're starting in Tide of Shadows, you know, against a lot of armies, that's a 1-up save.
Yeah. Even if you've got
massive.
Yeah, even AP2, you go, and without ignore cover, you go, oh, I have my 3-up save.
And you also have to bear in mind that damage 2 is very prevalent in 9th now.
It's not wasted against Terminators, but it's certainly not
it is
efficient.
to a degree.
Yeah.
Because it takes
efficient.
2 shots to kill 1.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. I know a lot of people will talk about stratagems, and we go over the combinations in the combo video on demand. But, you know, we talk about, lack of damage reduction now. The fact of the matter is, you've got the 3rd wound.
Yeah, which is a pseudo damage reduction.
You know, so they're not to be underestimated. I actually do think that there is a place for Terminators.
I think they're good. I just think if you're going full min-max.
Full efficiency, you're probably better off with strikes.
Yeah.
Having said that, there is a place for Terminators, and I actually do think Terminators are actually competitively priced. If anything, it may be that the Strike Marines are maybe just a little bit too cheap.
Yeah, we're not talking a huge amount. I think this is just
it'd be a very fine line, guys.
Yeah, this is
very fine line.
My general feeling with sort of units at the moment in 9th edition, and we'll go into this in more detail in another video, but it does feel like certain units are. It's been over, or rather underestimated, how potent they can be for their points cost. Skadari Rangers, for one. I know you don't agree, but certain units in the Drakari book.
Oh, I definitely agree.
We now compare this. So this is
I don't agree with Kabalites going up. I think Witches should probably.
Witches should go up, yeah. And Incubi. But the Strike Squad, when you compare it to like an Intercessor, or Perish the Fort, a normal Chaos Space Marine, we know whatever on that. The points difference is so minimal for such a big stat change that you get. Sure, you lose out on the extra range and the AP on your bolt gun, but you get double the shots, and you deep strike, and you're better in melee, and you're a Psyker.
The Intercessors are too expensive. And
there's a lot of discussion about Intercessors being too expensive. Yeah. You know, maybe, and therein lies the issue with the Strike Squad. I think they're just so efficient for what they can do. They will tend to edge out the Terminators, especially in a competitive min-max. I agree, they definitely have a place. I think actually maybe a unit of Terminators is your like home objective holders, because they're going to be tough to shift.
I think there is a place for them, and there are certain stratagems which, you know, you can increase that save to make it a 4+ invulnerable save as well, which is really useful. And of course, you've got psychic powers.
I think 42 for Terminators is about right.
I think it's about right.
I think 22 for Strike Squads is just, it's on the verge of being undercosted. And that kind of then has a trickle-down effect with the other units, because when you're only paying 2 points more for an Interceptor, it's wild.
They do lose OBSEC, but I think what you gain for that, and I was a fan of Interceptors when people were saying they were rubbish.
They're rubbish, mate.
No, they're not rubbish.
They're rubbish, mate.
Just play them well. They're really, really good. It's the truth.
Just get good.
If you've got a unit which can redeploy, now they can't do that anymore other than with one stratagem.
Yes.
Okay?
Or gate. Or gate.
But that's my point. You've got 2 accesses to that.
Yeah.
And
they still got a 12-inch move.
They've still got a 12-inch move, and now they're even better in combat.
Yeah.
These are a good unit.
Like, they're a great unit.
So, you know, I think Interceptors are fantastic. Yeah, 24 points a model. You know, I think competitively that you will see them. But here's the thing. I thought that you could see them competitively anyway, and people were saying they were rubbish. So I'm obviously not the be-all and end-all in terms of saying about Grey Knights, but I do think they're a competitive unit. I really do. They're so flexible. You need things to start on the ground. That's always half the problem with Grey Knights.
Yes.
Because you do want the deep strike element.
Yeah, because
if you want the deep strike element, half your army's still got to be on the board.
Yeah.
So what are you starting on the board?
Yeah. Well, that's where you do kind of go, I'll start on the board with, I mean, you probably have a Dread Knight or two.
Yep.
You've got a Terminator as your backfield objective holder, a couple of units of Interceptors, and then Wave 2 comes in. There's 5 strike squads.
Savage. So look, the other points that I want to highlight, because we're not going to go over all of the points today, and we're not really going to talk about a lot of the vehicles because they're basically just Space Marine vehicles.
Marine vehicles.
But the Nemesis Dread Knight, pretty aggressively pointed, coming in at like 175 with your
fully
traditional loadout, which will be your swords, 2 guns, and now the increased stats as well. I think these are very, very, very good.
Yeah.
Are they very good in an age of 9th edition where there was lots of D3+3 damage weaponry out there? That's up for debate. Because
well, they do have a 4-up though.
They do, but that's the thing. You've got the 4-up invuln, but you could be just taking more Strike Marines, for example. You could be. I'm not saying that's what you should do, but I mean, you could sort of go all in with power armor.
You get seven Strike Marines roughly for 1 Dread Knight.
Yeah. The Dread Knight does offer some things which the Strike Marines don't, which are some heavier guns.
Yes.
Which act at a decent range.
Yeah.
And obviously they are monsters in combat. So I do think that they are good.
Yeah. Especially because they're core as well. So they benefit from a lot of stratagems.
Yeah. A Grandmaster in Nemesis Dread Knight ends up being about the same points as he used to be. He's like the 220-ish mark, depending on if you give him a wisdom or a vision, which you probably are going to, guys. We'll talk about some of those combinations in the other video. Voldus at 150 points, steel. He's an absolute beat stick. Drago at 180. I mean, he is expensive, but he's Kaldor Drago.
Yeah, he's still a weapon. He's still a beast in combat. He's far more of a beat stick now, though, because obviously he's got the chapter master thing of I pick 1 unit.
Yeah. So we've got a top 5 units video coming up on demand as well.
Overall, I would say that the Grey Knights are actually pretty aggressively costed.
Yes.
They're pretty efficient for what they do. For the most part. I mean, the vehicles are a bit of a weird one because they're identical to the to the normal Space Marine units.
Yeah.
Identical in points, but don't get the benefits of the tides because they're not psychers.
Yeah, which is
outside of the Dreadnought.
It's a bit of a shame.
You're paying the same points for something that is worse, effectively. Which is why it's a bit weird. I mean, I get why they exist, but there's not enough. I'm sure they get the Aegis, but it wouldn't have hurt them to get access to the tides.
Yeah.
You know, that's not to say make them all psychers, because a psyker Razorback would be 1, hilarious, but 2, really weird. But just, you know, let them benefit from the army rules, guys. So they're a bit of an oddity, but for the most part, everything I think is pretty well costed. A tweak here or there just to sort of bring them in line, but that will apply for a lot of codexes. They've not paid a lot for their stat boosts, let's put it that way.
No. And they've really improved.
Oh yeah.
So look, that is our top 5 changes to Grey Knights. Big changes overall. My competitive rating, if you like, what do I think of the book overall? I'm really excited about it. I actually do think it is competitive. I know that there's some chatter online saying, oh, well, no, I think we might be worse overall. No. We are much improved.
That happens in every book, though.
Yeah, it happens in every book.
Remember when Drakari came out and everyone said that they were worse?
Yeah. Yeah. So
how many hats have you eaten, guys?
Yeah, the Grey Knights are very, very powerful, and again, you know, depending on how you build them, yes, it might get spammy. I do believe that.
But that's competitive play.
That's competitive play generally, anyway. And also, I think, unfortunately, because of the nature of Grey Knights, they actually don't have a very wide army selection. There aren't actually that many units to pick from. So any units that become a little bit more efficient, become the
just
unit
become
that you
the
see.
unit, yeah.
That's the nature of an elite army. You'll see it in things like Custodes and all of the, all of the elite armies. So look, overall, I'm a super happy Grandmaster of the Grey Knights. I'm looking forward to running a few different builds in the league.
Yeah.
I've already got my eyes set on one particular build. And so, yeah, you can look out for that very soon. So if you've enjoyed this faction focus top 5, go check out our other 2 over on demand on our website, where you can sign up for a minimal cost every month. And we'll teach you our top 5 combinations and our top 5 unit picks also. So thanks for watching, guys. As ever, I've been Lawrence. This has been Chef. We'll see you soon.
Goodbye.